The Tampa Bay Buccaneers are now 3 years removed from winning a Super Bowl. They are now in a tough spot. There's no Tom Brady, there's no Rob Gronkowski, there's no Bruce Arians. What do you do? Where do you go from here? Well, let's get into it. First things first, let's talk free agents, of which they have plenty. I mean, there is a good amount of free agents that they're going to have to re-sign on this list. Or let walk, which is going to certainly probably happen with a number of these guys. So Jamel Dean, Sean Murphy-Bunting, and Lavonte David are the big three, in my opinion. The number you see next to their name, that's how many millions of dollars they are projected to get using the Sports Track projection, or if they didn't have a projection, I put my own guess there. But yeah, Jamel Dean obviously has been a great corner for them since he's been in the league. He's certainly someone who I think Tampa Bay would love to keep. He's a good quality young corner, and Murphy Bunting as well, coming off of not his best year, but has been a good slot corner and was huge in their postseason run. And then Lavonte David, who from the brain side of you says, well, Lavonte David, getting up there in age, you're going through a rebuild, probably not the best business to make sure that you keep him. Maybe this is when you let him walk. That logically makes sense. When you're a team that isn't in a great situation, sometimes letting players walk who are a bit older is the right call here. The issue is just the personal side of things. You want Lavonte David to stay a Buccaneer for life. You don't want him to have to play for another team. He has meant so much to you in the 10 years he's been there. You've won a Super Bowl. He wore the alarm clock jerseys. I mean, he's worn 3 different jerseys for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. That's how long he's been there. You don't want to see him go necessarily, but at the same time, you could certainly understand why the logic would make sense. Some other players, too, that are maybe not the names of those 3 guys, but are still valuable. Mike Edwards and Anthony Nelson have both been key contributors for Tampa Bay since being on the roster, and I think that letting them walk would certainly be a bummer. But again, we're going to get into the cap space that they have in a second. That's where things get a little bit tricky, as they do not have very much cap space at all, so you're going to have to figure out something there. Akeem Hicks and Julio Jones are 2 players who, not exactly what they used to be, I think it's fair to say. They're veterans. I don't think Tampa Bay is going to make too much of an effort to try and re-sign them. In fact, I feel completely comfortable in saying those 2 guys will not be Buccaneers next year. They tried 1 year Flyers, and really, I mean, they were both kind of guys who were old and hurt a lot, and they were old and hurt last year. So, while it wasn't the worst idea in the world, just didn't work out. Again, a couple other guys who Buccaneers fans certainly like: Will Goldson, Raheem Nunez-Roches, and then Aaron Stinney. Goldson's been a player for a long time for Tampa Bay. Another guy who, personally, they probably would like to keep if possible. Does a lot of the little things that go unnoticed, typically for a casual fan. Definitely been a good player for them. Nunez-Roches has been a great backup to Vita Vea, one of the few guys who can also kind of do that role well. So what would a market be for Nunez-Roches? Maybe they can re-sign him for a cheap deal. Aaron Stinney was going to be probably the starting guard for them this season, but he filled in when Alex Kappa went down during their Super Bowl run. So he was a starting guard for them when they won a Super Bowl. Felt like he was going to be a starting guard as well, and in a situation where they could be cash strapped, maybe he's the move. Probably could get for not too much money, give him a shot and see what happens. As for the players they could cut, and this is how much money they would get, the Donovan Smith situation is fascinating. Donovan Smith, they paid him when he sucked, and then all of a sudden he got good. It was one of the weirder things you will ever see in the history of football, where he was just not very good, and yet they still went out and paid him a bunch of money. And then I guess, they were proven right. He ended up playing very well. He was very bad last year. He was, quite frankly, a mess last season. So do you just get rid of him now? You can save $10 million. You're strapped for cash. It might be a good idea. Or do you sit here and say, well, why are we going to sort of sell low on this guy when maybe we could, if we're rebuilding anyway, why not just give him 1 more year? But if they don't have the money to do it, they don't have the money to do it. Leonard Fournette, another player here who definitely is someone that, you have to consider. You have to think about cutting him. It only saved you $3 million, but the reality is he wasn't a $3 million player last year. I think they probably keep him, though, just because teams don't want dead cap, even though logically it doesn't make sense. There's a sunk cost fallacy there, but the sunk cost fallacy exists for a reason. So this is where they are currently at. Their cap space is at negative 57 million. Their cash is a little bit better. Their projected cash that they have is 36 million, so they can spend a little bit of money if they want to. And, again, projections for cash can easily be 15 million in either direction, maybe even 20 million in either direction. Really hard to tell exactly how much, I'm not in those meetings. I don't know exactly how much they're willing to spend, but the money needed to re-sign everyone, if those projections are correct, would be 76 million. They're just not going to get anywhere close to re-signing those guys. They might not re-sign any of those players, and that's where Tampa Bay is just in a really fascinating situation. If you look at this is where they ranked according to PFF in a ton of specific categories. So, passing, they were ninth. Passing was actually a bright spot for Tampa Bay. So now Tom Brady's gone, though, so that could go to, bottom 5 potentially, which definitely means you're going to be worse. Pass blocking was good, but run blocking was a mess. Receiving was really held together by Mike Evans. It was 19th ranked according to PFF. Running game was worst in football. Run defense was 23rd. Pass rush was 29th, and then coverage was also a bright spot at 9th, but that was really the only thing, that pass blocking and just passing in general, those were the only things Tampa Bay finished top 10 on, and they should be losing one of those things, potentially even 2 of those things, because part of why the pass blocking was good was probably in part because of what Brady can do. So if you do lose 2 of those things, and maybe all 3 with losing some of those corners, you could be an absolutely awful team. So while you might not want to lose Jamel Dean because he is someone who is very talented, is part of the logic potentially, let's just suck for this year, then Brady's contract comes off the books, then a lot of these guys' contract comes off the books the following year, and you're built for next year. You should have a very good draft pick to potentially go out and get a quarterback. It feels like that's the move, is to do that. You don't want to chase a division title in a year where you're a 7-10 record might win you the division, but then what do you do from that point forward? How is that helping you? I don't think it is. So in some ways, maybe letting some of these good players go might kind of, solve 2 problems here. Of one, now you don't have to worry about the cap space too much. I mean, you still have to clear up some cap space. You're 56 million over the cap. You're going to have to restructure some and push some down the road just to make it work. But also, it might not be the worst thing in the world to be a worse team next year, because there's apparently some good quarterbacks coming up the following draft, and that might be something that Tampa Bay looks towards. It's something that I think Tampa Bay should look towards. Where do they go from here? I think straight down. I think that's at least what I do, is I build for the future. There's nothing wrong with building for the future. Tank, try to be good next year. That's what I would do. What do you think? Let me know in the comments below. What are your thoughts on all of that? Always love hearing from you. And of course, as always, thanks for watching. If you like movies, check out my movie review channel. Every single movie title you see on the screen, I have a video about coming out within the next 2 weeks. I'm uploading a video every day for 2 weeks, so definitely make sure you're subscribed there. The link is in the description below. I got some other stuff on there too, some like breakdowns of certain scenes I like and things like that, so check it out.